Hey everyone, welcome to Wealth Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Reynolds, independent financial advisor and owner of Elevation Financial. As always, thanks for being here today. Glad you are here. Let's talk about credit cards today. I don't own a credit card, and I haven't since about 2009. It's been over a decade since I've actually owned a credit card. And I want to talk to you about my reasons for not owning a credit card today. So why I don't own a credit card. So first off, yes, I'm a total weirdo. A lot of people can't understand how I can function without a credit card. It's just become a way of life for most of us. 83% of people aged 30 to 49 own a credit card, and over half the households in the U.S. carry credit card debt. So I'm definitely not normal in this respect. I'm a little bit of a weirdo. Again, they've become a way of life. Credit cards are a way of life for the majority of Americans. We kind of swipe a card, pay for it later, and a lot of people are really into points, miles, cashback rewards, etc. A lot of loyalty to those programs. So I personally have decided to opt out of credit cards. I've got some reasons I'm going to share today. And I'm not saying that anyone is wrong for using credit cards, or that credit cards will ruin your life or anything, although they can sometimes. But I am suggesting that it might be worth re-examining your use of credit cards and deciding for yourself if they're really worth it. So again, this is not meant to be a admonition or a lecture or anything. It's meant to be a perspective. And I also, before we get started, I also want to acknowledge the issue of privilege in this as well. So I'm not saying that my methods work for everyone or are accessible to everyone. I realize a lot of people have different situations in which they don't have the same choices I have. And so I want to be sensitive to that and make sure that I acknowledge that I'm discussing this through that lens of privilege, and I'm aware of that. So also want to say hi to Leslie, who's joining via Facebook Live. Thanks, Leslie. Glad you're here. And just a reminder, if you're on Facebook Live or YouTube Live or LinkedIn Live today, feel free to post comments below, and I'll try to get to those as I see them. All right, so here are my reasons for not using credit cards. One, simplifies my life. I'm a big fan of simplicity. I think that there is a lot of value in clean, simple systems. There's a lot of value in simplifying your life as much as possible and avoiding complexity. I think we get more done if we make our lives as simple as possible. The more complicated a system is, the harder it is to maintain. This also translates to budgeting. Which is also a subject I'm very passionate about, as you may know. So if you run your budget based on income and spending from your checking account, and you only spend real money, actual cash from your account, then you've got a really clean and easy way to budget. You don't have to worry about how to categorize, credit card payments versus things you buy on your card and debit card, and kind of reconcile all that together. And yes, I know that plenty of budgeting software does handle this correctly. For example, the one I use called YNAB does actually handle credit cards. You can use a credit card with YNAB, and you can kind of make it work. However, you're still adding a layer of complexity into your cash flow system, especially if you have multiple credit cards. This is a layer of complexity that I just don't think is necessary. So I personally get a lot of peace of mind by not having to worry about having a credit card. I swipe my debit card for everything, and all expenses are posted to my budget against my main checking account. And it's all simple and clean and about as minimal and basic as it can be. So I wouldn't say this is the best reason for not using a credit card, but it's my favorite, honestly. It's not super convincing to everybody, but to me, it's one of my favorite reasons. The simplicity behind not having a credit card is really valuable to me. And again, just remember, these are perspectives. This is not meant to say anyone's right or wrong, but it's just my perspective that I'm sharing. So second reason, credit cards give you the illusion of having more money than you actually do. So no matter how much you intellectually understand how credit cards work and how much money you literally have in the bank, there's a psychological trick that credit cards can often play on you. So when you have let's say a $10,000 credit limit staring at you from your credit card, it feels like you have an extra $10,000 to spend. But you don't. It's not real money. It's credit. And a side effect of this illusion is that it can cause people to underestimate their need for short-term savings, which is your emergency fund. When you have no credit limit and you only use real money, you're motivated to save up enough to feel secure because you don't have that safety net of credit, that quote safety net of credit. But having a credit limit tends to relax your healthy impulse to save more, which can cause you to under prioritize your savings plan, which can cause problems later and cause you to go into debt when you encounter unexpected expenses. Does this happen to everybody? No, not necessarily, but it's something to watch out for. It's a word of caution that happens to a lot of people. Again, that illusion of having more money than you actually do can cause issues in your perspective and your bias toward your savings. So my next reason, people tend to spend more when they use credit cards and they're kind of chasing those points. The number one pushback I get from everybody pretty much when it comes to credit cards is points and rewards. Just about everyone I talk to uses points as the reason they are adamant about using credit cards, and they think they're coming out ahead due to these points. They use them for vacations and travel and cash back and rewards and all this stuff. So the number one reason by far I see is the attachment to points. So are they really coming out ahead? So there's a ton of data. Basically, I wouldn't say, I like to say proving, but I want to be cautious. I'll say strongly suggesting that people tend to spend more money when they use a credit card. So this is a quote from one of these references from Forbes. And the quote is, when someone buys an item with cash, they immediately know how much that item costs, which can be painful. Now, when I say cash, I also mean cash and or debit card, because again, it's real money we're feeling. It goes on to say, however, when someone pays with a credit card, there is a time period between when they purchase the item and when they have to pay for it, which makes the cost seem less important. And this is a reference from a study in Psychology Today. So according to that same research cited above, people tend to spend 100% more when using a credit card versus spending with cash. And again, when I say cash, I'm also kind of lumping debit card into that because it's similar. It's real money you're feeling from your bank account. So 100% more. People spend 100% more when using a credit card. So credit card companies know this, and they really lean into this even more by gamifying the system with points and cash back and miles. And they know that if they make you feel like you're getting a deal, then you're likely to feel less friction when using your credit cards. And this is the exact same reason that major retailers still use coupons and special offers. It gets us to buy more stuff. Think about your favorite retail store. I won't name any names, but there's plenty out there that everything is always on sale. You're always getting a coupon and email that says, hey, it's 50% off or 70% off or something ridiculous or whatever. And these coupons work. People feel like they're getting a deal. And often what they don't realize is the price has been marked up and then artificially put back down to a discount. And it's just this whole game that retailers play with us. So think about it for a minute. Would credit card companies push points so hard if they didn't make money on it? Why are they pushing points, and why are they centering their marketing around points and rewards? Probably because we fall for it and they make money on it. So a common argument to this point is, well, I track my spending very carefully. This doesn't apply to me. Well, maybe that's true. I don't know. Maybe it's true, but think about other areas in life where we lie to ourselves. Those into fitness, for example, use all sorts of assists to help them stay motivated, like joining group classes, doing online classes, working with a personal trainer, using apps. These are all acknowledgments that sometimes self-discipline is not enough. I'm personally in the same boat. I work out 3 times a week as a general, kind of my general schedule. But I have apps that kind of, push and remind me and schedule things for me and give me motivation. I need that. Otherwise I'm likely to not go down to the basement gym and probably not going to work out any given day. So, we benefit from these life hacks or guardrails that kind of keep us focused on the behavior we want. It'd be easy to say, well, I don't need help staying focused on my fitness goals. I have self-discipline. But in reality, most of us are perfectly willing to admit that these behavioral assists are sometimes really helpful in overcoming the gaps we can have in that motivation. Same goes for food in the fridge, for example. If we buy a bunch of junk food and stick it in the front of the fridge, are we likely to eat a bunch of junk food? Yeah, absolutely. If we stock the fridge with healthier choices, we're probably going to eat a little healthier simply due to the convenience of it, especially if we put that food in the front where it's more accessible. Not many people would argue with this. This is human nature. There's plenty of other examples, but for some reason, when it comes to credit cards, many people give themselves an unrealistically high score on self-discipline. So again, there's a lot of data, a lot of suggestions showing that people spend more money with credit cards. Even if they pay it off every month, just the act of using the credit card and paying for it later creates that detachment between the purchase and the paying for it, which causes us to lower that friction of spending and causes people to spend more. It's just human nature. So the final reason, or at least the fourth reason on this list, or the last reason on this list today is in my opinion, credit card points are exploitation. This is kind of an interesting perspective, maybe a little controversial, but I actually learned this from not learned this, but this point was brought up to me by another financial advisor who I was at a networking event once, or a conference once. So let's say you're one of the people who are truly responsible with credit cards. You pay them off each month. You really do get points. You control your spending. It's hard to argue with that unless you look at it from another perspective, which is the credit card system. The system of credit card points relies on exploiting people who are harmed by it. So you may be getting rewards by using your credit card responsibly, but the reason those programs exist is because other people don't. And the banks are exploiting that and making money on those people that are not using their cards responsibly. And there are plenty of other reasons for not using credit cards, including what we've talked about today, in my opinion. But when I think about how credit card companies make money by taking advantage of people, I really feel less inclined to participate in that system overall. Now, there's a lot of room for argument in this particular point. Some people would say, well, that's silly. The impact that I make by not using it is totally non-existent. It's not going to help anybody. Or there's other perspectives around, whether or not this is, ethical or not. And anyway, those arguments can all be had. But again, this is just my perspective, not to say anyone's right or wrong. But my perspective is this is one more reason for me that I feel great about not using credit cards. It works well for me personally, in my perspective, and that helps me kind of feel like I'm on the right path for me. So, to me, the cons outweigh the pros when it comes to credit cards. Are there pros using credit cards? Yeah, there are some. I mean, I'll admit that the primary advantage that credit cards have over debit cards is that they can shield your bank account against fraud. So while the same fraud protections do exist for debit cards, assuming you swipe as a credit transaction, and you're likely not going to be liable for it even with a debit card, it's still a fact that if there is fraud, the money is temporarily gone from your checking account. So there are ways to minimize this. Again, I want to acknowledge this is a real risk, and I'm not discounting that, but there are some ways to minimize this. So one thing I do is look for banks that have really good online tools, so I can freeze my debit card through an app instantly if I need to. I want to make sure they're proactive about contacting me with suspected fraud alerts. I also use siloed bank accounts where I can limit exposure to any one card. And again, I want to acknowledge again that not everyone has these same choices and accessible options, but in my case, this works for me. And siloing your bank accounts in separate buckets really helps a lot as well, because you can not expose all of your money to fraud. So for me, that again, I want to acknowledge there are a few downsides, but the bank I work with, for example, for my brick and mortar bank, they're very proactive about fraud. They call me instantly if there's anything at all suspicious. They've been very good about that. I feel I have a level of comfort working with my bank. Leslie has a question here on Facebook Live saying, what about additional protections like extra warranty time? That's a good question. That could be a perk that is useful. I have never had an occasion to use that, so I don't have a lot of experience with this. So if you want to follow up, Leslie, with your comment and maybe mention an experience you've had with extra warranty time, or maybe how it works in your experience, I would love to hear more. Maybe we can circle back to that. So thanks for bringing that up. So another helpful key to minimizing your risk of fraud when using debit cards is to be vigilant and very fast when reporting debit card fraud. If you report fraud promptly, you're more likely to be absolved of liability. So make sure that a good argument for budgeting and watching your transactions and seeing what's coming in and noticing if there's something amiss. If you report fraud very quickly, you're much more likely to not be liable for any of it. So again, I'm going to readily admit that if you want the best possible protection against fraud, credit cards have an advantage. But to me, there are things you can do to reach a level of comfort, in my opinion, that are very helpful. And I'm comfortable with that level of comfort. I guess it's redundant, but I'm comfortable with that level. So ultimately, you may temporarily be out a little bit of money if you're a victim of debit card fraud. I get that, but it's generally not catastrophic if you're managing your accounts well, and if that's something accessible to you. So to me, that one disadvantage is pretty easily dealt with and doesn't really outweigh the downsides to me. Also, car rental places, they're the bane of my existence when it comes to debit cards. Car rental places make it really difficult for you to use a debit card. They just do. They're just kind of how they are. So if you use a debit card at a car rental place, depending on the company, they may just make you pay more, that jump through more hoops. Some companies are better than others. Some car rental companies will be fine with a debit card. Just kind of depends on the company. So renting a car is one issue as well. So again, my perspective, not saying anyone's right or wrong here, but some people ask. In fact, a lot of people are interested and curious because I tell people, hey, I don't own a credit card. I just don't. And they're curious and they ask about why. And so this is kind of my way of explaining why and hopefully giving some perspective and information that may add to your thought process to help you decide if credit cards work for you or not. Personal choice. So Leslie responded with a link. Oh dear, I can't click on the link with the interface I have. I'm going to put it on screen there. She followed up with a comment here. So Leslie says, using a credit card, depending on the person's credit card, can add a year of additional warranty time to electronic purchases. So I don't have to buy an extended warranty. Okay, that's a good point. Thanks, Leslie, for bringing that up. I'm going to add that comment to the on screen as well there. So yeah, that's an advantage. I'm not going to deny that. That may be useful. I'll admit, I haven't used a warranty in a long time. Maybe I've just been lucky or fortunate. But a lot of electronics these days, I think, are made pretty well, I guess, and I haven't really needed it. So if the extended warranty is important to you, then that would be a reason for you to use credit cards. And if that's a perk of your card. Again, all these things, when you look at the big picture, that's still not worth it to me. So even if I did have to use an extended warranty, it's pretty rare, I think, that happens these days. Again, maybe it's just my experience. I don't know, but I don't really. Okay, this is a whole discussion to have around extended warranties. So, Best Buy, for example, these places you buy electronics, they love selling you extended warranties. And why? It's because they make money on it. They understand that it's pretty rare that people use extended warranties and they're not going to have to pay them out very much. But if they sell them to you, they make money on this thing they're never going to have to deliver on. So to me, extended warranties, not that big a deal. Just my experience. So that's a great question, Leslie. I'm glad you brought that up. So thanks for the conversation. All right. So those, I should say, are my reasons for not using credit cards. Again, I'd love to talk about this more if you have any questions. I have conversations with my clients on a regular basis about this. And again, really want to stress, this is a choice, not right or wrong, but I like to explain the reasons behind my choice and why I feel good about those choices and why I think there can be some beneficial reasons to consider avoiding credit cards or maybe reducing, avoiding, or eliminating the use of credit cards, depending on your situation. So with that, thanks for the conversation today, Leslie. I know Becky was here as well. Hi, Becky. Becky sent me a wave on Facebook Live. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here today. But just a reminder, if you want to talk about this or anything else, or if you're not a client yet and you'd like to have a conversation, ask some money questions, and just kind of chat for a few minutes, feel free to reach out. My website is elevationfinancial.com, and you can find a big friendly button on the homepage that says book a complimentary money session. And that's where you can ask any questions you want, and we'll chat via virtual meeting anywhere. By the way, you can be anywhere in the country. I work with all 50 states, so feel free to reach out from wherever you are and grab some time, and we'll chat. elevationfinancial.com. Thanks everyone for joining me today. Have a great day. We'll see you next time. All right, Leslie and Becky, thanks so much for stopping by. I'll keep the chat open for a little bit longer here. If there's anything else, since we had some conversation. So Becky said, thanks, lots of great points. We'll put that on screen. And Leslie says, don't get me wrong, Michael, overall I agree with you. I avoid using my credit cards mostly. Awesome. Thanks, Leslie. I'm glad you share some of those perspectives, and I'm glad it's working well for you. So appreciate the feedback. All right. So if there are any other questions or comments, feel free to pop those in the next 5 to 10 seconds. But as always, just a reminder that I'm here every Tuesday for the most part, unless something unforeseen comes up. But for the most part, I'm here every Tuesday at 1:30 Eastern on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live, and on LinkedIn Live. And of course, you can always grab this via the podcast at elevationfinancial.com or on Apple Podcast or Android or Spotify, pretty much wherever you get podcasts. So I try to be accessible to as many people as possible. So, all right. Thanks everyone for that. I'm going to sign off now. Have a great day. Thanks.